you guys doing? Welcome back. It is the Dan and Jared show, the Mush Love from the Mushroom Show. One of those where we're getting there with what we're going to call ourselves. It's been a couple week hiatus, had a lot of things going on, been busy. The world is like reopened again, a lot of stuff going on. But good to be back, lots to talk about. How you doing, Dan?
Doing phenomenal. Since we were last doing an episode, I went to Vermont on vacation for a little bit.
Oh
Just
yeah.
been taking some time to get back in my fitness routine. Kind of fell off for a little bit, so just been trying to like re-immerse myself in a schedule and get back consistent now. And if I do wind up moving to Austin in the next couple months, I'm just trying to really grind and get my funds and everything settled before. So yeah, man, just been working hard and enjoying life.
I like it. So, you just said a word that kind of reminded me of something I've been thinking about or want to talk about is so we always have said like the Stamets protocol or the Fadman protocol of 5 days on, 2 days off, whatever it might be. I don't even know what word you just said that reminded me of that. I think back on routine or back on schedule.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Basically, what I was thinking is like, uh, I wouldn't typically recommend microdosing forever for the rest of my life, just indefinitely. Even if I'm following the Stamets protocol or the Fadiman protocol, I feel personally, and to each person, they have their own unique needs or wants. I feel like I saw this a couple weeks ago and I liked it a lot. Doing the schedule for, let's say, a month or 6 weeks, whatever like amount of time you think you need, and then after you're done with your 4 week or 6 week schedule, taking a good 2 weeks off to kind of like reset and then going back into the protocol. Basically to kind of like assess the whole month off and like kind of make new intentions, see what you need again. Sometimes it's hard to see what you need while you're in it. What do you think about
Mm.
all that?
Yeah, I agree, and I think that's probably one thing that I probably haven't done enough since I started microdosing is really take time away
Mm-hmm.
from it because it's been so like enjoyable, it's been so productive for me. But there was a period, it was about a week and a half, it was probably like 2 weeks where I didn't take any because it was the last time I performed or whatever. I went to that show and that weekend I performed and I wound up going a little bit too hard, whatever I was
Mm.
performing and partying the next night. And I think I just kind of ran down my immune system. And also that weekend, I felt like there was one night where I took, normally I always take the microdoses in the morning. There
Mm.
was one night where a friend of mine had some of microdoses or whatever, and I took them later in the night. And then we would just went out like to the bar, and I kind of forgot I even took one. It was like a very, very ill-intentioned way to use it in my mind. And then,
Mm.
ironically enough, it probably just coincidence in me wearing myself down. But like 2 days after that, or like the next day, I woke up and was like really had like pneumonia or something like that. I had like a really bad cold that whole week, and I was like, damn, that's what happens when you mistreat the medicine. It punches you
Exactly.
sometimes. But no, yeah. So that 2 week period after I was sick, and then at the same time, I also took a tolerance break from smoking weed because I'm a pretty
Mm.
heavy cannabis user and stuff. So it's like maybe I should have done them at different times just to see what was coming from what, so I could isolate the independent variables. But
Mm-hmm.
I would say that that 2 weeks of complete like sobriety, wasn't smoking, drinking, doing anything, no caffeine, was really, really grounding for me. And it allowed me to kind of fall back into like my normal rhythm of what I feel like and kind of like you said, get a tally of like where my mind is at without the influence of anything. And I'm someone who's always been like we talk about this very mind over matter. And as beneficial as microdosing is, I don't think you need it to get the effects. Like once you've experienced it, I feel like you can carry a lot of that mentality. Or like let's say you're
Mm-hmm.
microdosing, which and might be the foot in the door to help you make positive changes in your life. You start doing breath work, meditation, exercise. Like then it's sort of like it grows legs of its own legs of like healthy habits. And if you kick out one leg of that being the microdose, those other habits are still standing independently, which
Yeah.
I would think would allow the positive results to continue. So
Definitely. I feel like similarly when you more I feel like when you're doing like a macro dose or a full dose and you're like tripping, you when you see something for the first time or something make opens up and you're able to think about it in a certain way for the first time, once you're done tripping, you can't not think or you can't not remember that the way you thought because like
Right.
once your eyes open, your eyes open. So similarly, I feel like when you're healing, once you're healed, it might be difficult to go through the steps every day, but like once you realize, hey, maybe I'm being hard on myself, or maybe my anxiety, I can control it a little more. When you're off the microdose, because it exposed you to that power of being able to be in control, I feel like you're able to do it a little bit more afterwards. Um,
Yeah, like the
Go
two
ahead.
main things I took from microdosing were like awareness and intention. So like like those can stand like, and like I said, even when I'm not doing it now, I have more awareness. Like you said, I used to have really negative internal monologue and beat myself up and think I'm not worthy of my success. Now it's like I've conquered that. That's something, or not conquered. It's always, those
Right,
thoughts always arise, but the moment they do, I can see them for what they were, for what
right,
they are, not let them dominate my whole day. And intention too, of like, how am I gonna go about my day? What am I gonna put my time into? So yeah, those two things remain with or without microdosing, and it's like it showed me that, and then, like you said, the eyes are open now. So it's like it's not like I'm
exactly.
just gonna go back to like shutting them.
So another thing that has been on my mind, and you kind of reminded me of it, was saying you didn't smoke too much for those 2 weeks. So I'm a heavy smoker. It's something that I've been trying multiple times to cut back on. Last year I was doing pretty well with it, but then COVID happened, and I've been smoking a lot since. But I never thought of it until recently, and it seems, I don't know. I want to hear what you think about it, but microdosing cannabis. Never thought about it before, but the last couple weeks it came up somewhere, and I realized like maybe I wonder if all the benefits I'm trying to get from cannabis, if I took it in a sub-perceptual way, would I still get those benefits and would I still enjoy it? And would that help me wean off of it?
Interesting. It's hard to say. I feel like a lot of people who are long-term cannabis users, though, like the reason that they're cannabis, like the reason that they like it is for the feeling and for kind of that macro like relaxation.
Mm-hmm.
And not to say that like microdosing wouldn't, like it's still in your system. I think that would make it easier to take a full-blown tolerance break, because I know people say it's not physically addictive, but when I quit for the 2 weeks I did, like there's real physiological things, because like
Definitely.
since I started when I was 17, like 6 years ago, I've smoked every day. Like
Yep.
there hasn't been a single period in those 6 years that I took was able to take a 2 week tolerance break. So the two things I noticed that are super reliant on cannabis in my biome was like my appetite and my sleep schedule. So when the first 2 days when I wasn't smoking, I literally almost couldn't even get myself to eat without smoke. Like I
Yep.
had zero appetite. And then the other thing is that like I'm sort of kind of an insomniac already, very high strung person. So weed is like something that helps me go to bed at the end of the night and just kind of helps like get into that sleepy state or whatever. So I noticed immediately when I quit, I was like having trouble sleeping, but and having trouble eating, and my dreams were
Yep.
crazy and shit. So it's like there is some physiological hurdles in the beginning which can make it slightly uncomfortable. So I think microdosing, it might make it like, if you go from smoking every day, then taking like a 50 milligram edible in the morning, to then the next week maybe only 10 milligrams, to the point where then it's like your body can wane off of it in a way that is less intense. That could be solid. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I think most people want to feel it. So I think a lot of stoners would be like, "Oh, microdose weed? No, like what that
Mm.
macrodose only, fam? Like what do you mean? What's that for?"
Yeah.
So I don't know.
No,
Hard to say.
exactly. And so I guess that brings me to thinking of, I like mushrooms the most. I feel like they're the most natural. They're not too intense. I don't know. I just like mushrooms. But with the whole trending of people accepting psychedelics, it seems like LSD, DMT, ketamine, ayahuasca, they're all getting more popular and more accepted. Um, would you ever be open to? Have you thought of microdosing any of those or doing full on healings? I know LSD is something that people microdose from time to time. DMT is something that people microdose from time to time. The others are ones that you kind of do like a full ritual with. Have you ever thought of any of those?
I have thought about it, and I've talked to friends. I actually have a friend who just finished up college who's an amazing guitarist, and he was talking about his anecdotal experience of microdosing LSD when he was like really suffering in college at a low point. just put a tab in a water bottle. So like that's also for people who don't know, that's the best way to microdose LSD. People will be like, oh, just cut a piece of the tab. That's not how it works. You have
100%.
to,
I learned from not the easiest ways. That shit's
yeah,
tough.
no, for sure. So yeah, volumetric distillation, they call it. LSD is water soluble. So if you put it in any type of beverage, then you know from how much liquid volume you drank of
Drink one
that you
tenth
can
of
measure.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You're getting exactly 1/10. So that's one thing. But my friend was like really it was one of the hardest semesters in college. He said he was going through some emotional stuff, family stuff. So he was like kind of in ups and downs, and his grades started to suffer. And he's a great student. I mean, kid kills it. And he went from like straight A's, he said, to like C's. And then he came back after like a break in the middle of the semester and started microdosing. And he said within by the end of the like halfway through the semester, towards the end, he got all the way back up to A's and got like Dean's List and was in the
Hmm.
best mental health. And he said it was super, super beneficial for him. I personally feel like I might not enjoy microdosing LSD because I'm someone who's like very high strung already. And I feel like LSD's microdosing is kind of more of almost like a minor stimulant, whereas to me,
Mm-hmm.
mushrooms feels like almost like a minor downer.
How did you
Um,
know that, or how would you know that if you haven't tried? Because I definitely agree with what you're saying from experience, but I didn't know that before it. But you're definitely
Well,
right.
so it's like again, it's hard for me to speak with certainty on the matter. Just a lot of this is anecdotal experience, but I have taken full doses of LSD in the past, and that is like, but
True.
you can't compare like
Yeah.
a full dose of mushrooms and a microdose of mushrooms are not the same. It's apples and oranges.
Right.
So
But you could.
it's
But you're completely right with what you're thinking. Or at least from my perspective, that's what I've felt.
yeah, it definitely seems like it's almost like a very, very like minor Adderall, like a
Mm-hmm.
very like I get that like increased energy feeling and all. So
Can't sit still
I
on it at all. I can't.
no, and I feel like that would be bad for me personally, microdosing. I think people who are naturally a little bit more introverted, quiet, are the type who like want to be more out and want to have more energy, which is like a lot of our, some people drink coffee every morning to start their day. Like
Right.
maybe that'd be better for them, but for me personally, I haven't really ever thought about attempting it.
Mm.
And also for some reason, this is just my own mental things, like my own mental fears or whatever, I guess. I have just like a slightly negative stigma around LSD. I just feel like it has a slightly more potential for harm.
Mm.
And especially if you're, I don't know this, I haven't looked at enough data, but I mean, if you're using it every day, something about that like kind of makes me wary about
You're
like the neural pathways and rewiring your brain because not
definitely.
that psilocybin doesn't do the same thing, but I feel like it's a little bit more benign and I trust it because it just pops out of the ground. It's a little bit more
Yeah.
or it's plant medicine.
I think you're completely right on that too. I feel like, for lack of a better word, you're more likely to like eventually get loopy on LSD, and like, um, I'm all for it. I wouldn't judge you, but society would probably start thinking, noticing that you're a little different and treating you differently. So I think actually Paul Stamets commented on that once. That I believe he was talking about Terrence McKenna, and Terrence McKenna is a genius in my opinion. Paul Stamets is a genius in my opinion. I'm pretty sure, this is my theory, my opinion, people gravitated towards Paul Stamets more, and he has more of an influence in the industry, even though Terrence McKenna's dead, would have more influence right now and more acceptance by like universities and whatnot because he wasn't as loopy. I think Terrence did a lot of LSD, and people kind of didn't give him as much respect at a certain point because he came off a little bit weird.
Right. Yeah, especially with like pre-existing mental conditions and things like that. I feel like
Mm,
acid is something you definitely have to tread more carefully with. And my mom is like bipolar schizophrenic, so
mm,
I've like again that's where my personal fears and my own like me treading carefully with LSD comes from because I have seen friends go through some like kind of negative mental experiences or I've in my town there was like one person there was like they're called gel pyramids where they're like they're like it's like acid in like a gel tab but the way it releases it's normally like when you it's kind of like a
mm.
normal experience. You're rising. There's the climax, and you're kind of coming down or whatever. There might be a couple like sine wave type thing, but the gel pyramids, the way they work is it's like super late release, and it just like all comes out at the same time, and it's like you're just like peaking for, I think it's like a shorter period of time, but it also apparent a lot of people say they don't feel it for like hours, like so
Mm.
like you won't feel it for like 6 hours, and then and you're like, oh, this isn't working, and then suddenly you get smacked off your dome. So there was like two people I know of that were in my town. Like the one girl, she had to like get like psychiatric help after, because she took one and thought nothing was happening, then took a second, and like, it like, I think it was just very overwhelming. And
Oof.
and we all have those, those types of stories, and a lot of that is probably about people's own pre-existing mental conditions or their lack of intention. So I don't want to demonize the substance, but to me, like you said with Stamets and stuff, I just think mushrooms are so much like, you know, I just have more of a trust for things that grow out of the ground. It's like the earth is giving us these nodes of information. It's literally like spawning these little nodes, and humans, we eat them, and then suddenly we have these revelations about how we want to be better to the earth and not hurt the earth. And to be fair, LSD is derived from ergot, which is also grows out of the ground. But you never know. The other thing is where are you sourcing it from? Mushrooms, it's like most of the time they're probably like, unless you can obviously see a bad fungus or something, they're probably going to be good.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, you don't know the chemist, you don't know if someone's doing
Great
that for
point.
profit, you don't know if there's research chem. And I also think a lot of the times people have had bad experiences, it might not actually be LSD too. So that's why I'm hesitant to just demonize the compound as a whole when it could have
Yeah.
just been some research chem someone got. So
Great. Yeah, you bring up great points. It's I think it's impressive. You said you're not, before we had this conversation. You're like, I might not know too much about LSD, and you seem to know plenty.
yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of good info. Dang, I had one. So I want to ask you one, if you'd be down, if you'd ever be interested in like a ayahuasca ceremony. Oh, and then the other. So that's my question. We'll get to that. But then just interesting thing that I read within the last year about LSD. I agree with everything you said. It's definitely a little bit more scary. You got to be a little bit more careful with it. I feel a lot of that. But I heard of back in like the 60s or something, I think it was, a group of people at Woodstock, or not at the actual festival, but in that area. And they were basically doing drugs, and they thought that this powder was cocaine, and it wasn't cocaine, it was acid. And these people ended up doing like 200,
Like
300
100 tabs. Yeah, I've heard this.
at a time, and it healed these like crazy diseases that they had.
Yeah.
Like, to me it made no sense, but yeah, all of a sudden these people had like a range of different diseases, and they were all like just healed instantly.
So,
They couldn't walk or talk for like 3 days.
but after that,
But after that they were healed, which I don't know, sounds wild.
yeah, I've also heard that. I've heard that story. I don't know how much like credibility or whatever, but it seems like it's like a pretty valid tale.
It was in Rolling
From
Stones magazine. It was like, it was real.
Yeah, I think, yeah. So my opinion on that too is, I mean, like the original acid was in like, whether MK Ultra and all that shit. Like acid was invented to try to like make people better, and like
Mm.
expand like hemispheres of the brain that don't normally communicate, and it really like, or like mind body connections that you wouldn't otherwise be able to access. And here's just an anecdote for you, because I've done acid twice in my life. One time was 4 years ago, and the other time was in Vermont a couple of weeks ago, so it's
Mm.
like very spaced out. But
Mm-hmm.
my experience in Vermont was that the mind body connection, and like I've been having like this chronic like tightness from the way I work out. I have like an imbalance that goes from like my shoulder up to my neck, and like there's this like tightness in my jaw because of it. And when I was on LSD, I was so astutely aware of all of the pain and all of like what it was, almost like I could see like the strand of
Mm.
imperfection like through my skin. I could like visualize where it was. It was like I
Mm.
had a mental image of my full body map, and I could kind of like whatever. So I was like, we were there, and it was a bunch of like my fit friends, lifting the park, like that type of group of
Mm.
people and stuff. So instead of just sitting around being like degenerates while we were tripping, we were literally like throwing around kettlebells and doing all these very flow-based movement patterns. And it's funny because when I was coming up, I before I felt anything, the my one friend Alex was trying to show me a like a kettlebell flow workout where you do all these things and you throw it and you catch it, and it's like it was like very, but it's, if you're not used to that, it's kind of awkward, the movements. I'm like, and I was overthinking it. I was trying to work out too much with my mind, where I was like, wait, which arm does what? And like I couldn't get into the flow. I couldn't just surrender and let my body get into this movement
Mm.
pattern. So that happened, and then hours later, Alex and some people went and did their own thing, and he came back and he came to work out later in the day when I was full on like tripping, having a great time, giggling and shit. And I was determined. I looked at him, I was like, show me that kettlebell circuit again. I want to learn. And it was crazy when I was tripping. It was like the mind body connection was so unreal. And I started like yeeting these fucking kettlebells
Yeah.
around, and I got into it, and like it still took like maybe 5 minutes to like get the muscle memory. Like it was still a little awkward, and I was thinking about it. And ironically, this relates into music for me as my music producer shit. But
Mm.
like I was like just about to get it. I was like starting to understand it, and then someone brought out their Bluetooth speaker and started playing music, and
Ah,
everyone witnessed this happen. The moment the Bluetooth speaker went
you
on, I
got
was
it.
like, boom, boom, and
Yeah.
like doing all and perfectly, and everyone starts laughing. They're like, he just needed a little music, like no
Yeah.
surprise there. And
That's
this is
awesome.
another anecdote. I got a concussion like 4 or 5 months ago, and I think I have had like minor post-concussive syndrome where so I'm pretty sure this is crazy. You're gonna think this is very interesting.
Hmm.
So I hit my head and had like minor vertigo for like a couple weeks after and stuff. I've never had like a real serious concussion in my life, but there's a condition about 1 to 2% of the population has called aphantasia,
Hmm.
where you know how you close your eyes and someone can be like visualize a clock, and you can visualize your mind's eye, the ability to visualize
Right.
with your eyes closed. About 1 to 2% of the population has no mind's eye. You tell them to close their eyes and visualize, it doesn't happen. They don't
Wow.
have a mind's eye,
That's
which is like
wild.
a scare. You're like, wow, that sounds like it would suck, right?
Yeah.
So after I got it, and I'm like a very visual person my whole life. I could like, close my eyes and visualize like movies. I'd be a daydreamer in school, shit like that.
Right.
After I got this concussion, I have aphantasia now. I like can't visualize with my eyes closed.
That's
Fuck.
terrifying.
I smacked the part of my head, and I looked up threads about this. I said developing aphantasia after concussions, and there was like articles about other people having
Huh.
similar shit.
I had a
But
concussion. That's that bump right there.
damn, but yeah, after when I was on the LSD, I was having really strong closed eye visuals, and ever since then, I feel like I've been almost like getting my mind's eye back slowly. So, I mean, it does allow the brain to communicate, and like hemispheres that wouldn't otherwise be accessing each other to talk. So I think LSD definitely has benefits, and I forget the initial even question how I got on the tangent, but yeah,
Uh,
that's my
I forgot what exactly it was, but that was a cool ass story. That's I hope you get your third eye back or whatever that's called so you can
yeah.
visualize things. That's wild. Like
But you
I
would
can't
think it's
imagine
just
that.
you'd think it's just negative, but like there's almost been positive aspects of it because
That's
I
true.
used to be like a daydreamer, and I would get distracted in my own head thinking about like these false
Huh.
scenarios, and now it's like that doesn't happen as much. So I mean, hey,
It
maybe blessing and a curse. It is what it is.
it reminds me of, some people don't have like a inner voice, like when they think
Yeah, that too. It's the visual equivalent of that.
yeah, that sounds nuts to
That's
me.
so crazy to me. Yeah, like my inner
Um
voice is so loud.
I think what you were basically saying is when you were tripping, the mind body connection was like very apparent. I think
Oh,
that's
because you brought up the thing
yeah,
in
yeah,
Woodstock. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So that's what I was gonna say is I totally think that like most illness is rooted in the mind, even physical
Mm-hmm.
ailments. It's like where
Definitely.
like in Buddhist culture they have something called a samskara,
Mm,
which is like basically people who have had a lot of emotional trauma in their lives. It'll bundle up and become solidified in certain parts of their body. So people with really bad anxiety, normally they say it's your heart, your stomach, and
mm,
stuff like that. So it's like people can have emotional trauma that literally causes a lot of physical illnesses. And we're learning that
definitely.
about like IBS, Crohn's
Y-
disease, a lot of
Yeah.
these things like anxiety and the mind is related to our gut biome
Our
and
butt biome. I like
our
that.
butt but yeah, so I believe that story because like when I was tripping, I literally was working out in a way where I was feeling all of my imbalances and I was fixing them. And after the trip, I was like, oh my God, like I feel like my mind is purged. I feel like my body, I understand how I want to work out to help like fix all these misalignments and stuff. So I totally believe LSD is really potent and has its purposes. I just think that might be a better tool for full on dosing than something where you're doing it every day because that makes
Yeah.
me wary. But I don't
And
know.
reminds me too though also like what you alluded to earlier is everything that you just experienced is possible without drugs also. It's just drugs can like help you kind of get there. And then hope I feel like a goal for me is like once I get there to kind of try and stay there without as many tools as possible. I think I've mentioned before, like Ram Dass used to trip a lot on LSD, and one time he was like in a week-long meditation with his guru, and his guru, he didn't tell his guru he was tripping, and just in the middle of the meditation he said like, you don't need that, and he never tripped again after that. It was
Yeah.
like, because you don't need it, it helps. But
Yeah.
I think that's about it. I love talking to you. Fucking time goes by super quick. Always
Hell yeah.
fun. So just to wrap up, for myself, I think we just talked a little bit about like microdosing other substances, mostly cannabis and LSD, and like saying what those differences would be like. Pretty cool, pretty awesome. If you guys enjoyed, please like, subscribe. I can't even talk right now. And then I haven't told Danny yet, so this is going to be a surprise for him too. But I'm trying to have a guest on ASAP. So if you want to be on, just let us know. And that's basically all that you need to do. and you'll be on. So see you next week. Appreciate it. Let us know any other topics you might want to listen to. Peace out. Thank you, Danny.
Much love.
Much love.